Imagine you're stranded in the middle of the ocean, on a massive, silent ship. No crew, no power, and something unnatural watching you through the walls. This isn't just a ghost ship, it's alive. And it wants to turn you into spare parts. A Virus, 1999. Movie is a sci-fi horror thriller where an alien entity made of pure energy hijacks a Russian research vessel and transforms it into a nightmare factory of flesh and metal. What starts as a salvage mission quickly spirals into a desperate fight for survival, and humanity's only hope rests in the hands of a few terrified survivors. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Film Decoded. In this video, I am going to recap one of the thriller mystery film story. Title, Virus. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to everyone a happy and great day. Without wasting a time, let's begin the story. The story opens in the South Pacific Ocean, where a massive and technologically advanced Russian research vessel named Academic Vladislav Volkov is shown communicating with a Mir space station. This ship isn't just any research vessel. It's equipped with scientific labs and top-tier Russian technology designed for space communications and data analysis. Suddenly, from deep space, a strange glowing energy begins approaching the Mir station. The scientists on board notice the light but assume it's harmless. Within seconds, the glowing energy strikes with the force of lightning, completely frying Mir's systems and killing everyone on board. As the energy continues its path, it redirects toward Earth. On Earth, the crew aboard the Volkov suddenly loses contact with Mir. Confusion quickly turns into panic as the ship's systems begin to malfunction. A massive electrical surge then shoots down from the sky, striking the Volkov's antenna and causing severe damage to the ship. One of the scientists, Nasha, notices something alarming. Their computer systems are being overtaken. Data is being stolen, and the entire system appears to be hijacked. But what happens next remains unexplained, leaving behind a chilling sense of mystery. 7 days later, we're introduced to a battered tugboat named Sea Star, navigating the same treacherous waters. The crew is struggling to tow a massive cargo barge through a violent storm. Waves crash violently, flooding the barge and threatening to sink both vessels. Captain Robert Everton is a stubborn and emotionally scarred man. When Steve Baker, one of the crew members, suggests cutting the tow line to save their own ship, Everton refuses. He and his son had invested everything they had into that cargo. Steve warns that if they don't cut the line, they'll all go down with it. In response, Everton pulls a gun to assert control. Steve calls his bluff, but before things escalate, the tow line snaps on its own, and the cargo ship is lost to the sea. Everton slumps in defeat, while Steve warns him never to threaten him again. Besides Steve and Everton, the crew consists of Woods, Kiko, Richie, Julio, and a skilled navigator named Kelly Foster. After losing the cargo, they try to redirect the tug and ride out the storm. By the next morning, the damage becomes clear. The tugboat is taking on water. They discover a hole in the lower hull, and with no quick fix available, they attempt to radio for help. But being so far out at sea, there's no response. Just then, a massive ship appears on their radar. It's the Volkov. The crew tries several times to establish radio contact, but receives no reply. Despite the silence, they decide to approach the ship, hoping to find help or supplies. The lack of communication feels unsettling, but they press on. Everton, on the verge of giving up due to financial ruin, changes his mind when he hears about the derelict vessel. According to maritime law, salvaging an abandoned ship could entitle them to a share of its value. Given the size and capabilities of the Volkov, the crew estimates they could each walk away with $4 million. Everyone except Foster is thrilled by the idea of becoming rich. But Foster remains uneasy. Why would such a highly advanced vessel be left completely abandoned? Exploring the Volkov, the crew finds it in terrible shape. Interiors battered, equipment destroyed, bloodstains everywhere, and no sign of any crew. The ship is dead silent, its power completely out. Foster suspects that lightning may have struck the vessel, but then raises a chilling question. Where are the bodies? Everton, seeing an opportunity for profit, orders the crew to bring the ship back to a nearby port. Steve and Julio begin working to restore power, and soon the Volkov flickers back to life, but something feels off. Foster notices that the ship's computer systems are running by themselves, even though no one is at the controls. She reports this to Everton, but he dismisses her concerns. Meanwhile, security cameras across the ship come online, and it becomes clear someone or something is watching and controlling them. Just as the crew prepares to maneuver the Volkov, its anchor suddenly drops, crashing onto their tugboat and destroying it beyond repair. In the chaos, Hiko's leg is badly injured, and Steve dives into the water to save him. They manage to bring him aboard the Volkov, shaken and unsure whether the anchor drop was accidental or if someone is still on board. Steve races up to the deck, realizing Julio is still in the engine room. He immediately radios him, informing him that their tug has sunk and warning him to stay alert and lock the doors. Furious over what just happened, Steve still agrees to stick with the original plan as the captain insists to take the abandoned ship back to port and claim it. Meanwhile, Hiko is taken to the medical bay where Foster begins treating his injured leg. Suddenly, one of the lockers creaks open and a masked woman jumps out, firing a gun at them. Luckily, no one is hit. Steve seizes the moment, tackles her, and knocks her out cold. When Everton finds out someone's alive on board, he's not happy. According to maritime law, even a single living person voids salvage rights. No pagut, no million. The crew searches the woman's bag and finds multiple weapons, immediately raising red flags. Why is she the only survivor? And what happened to the rest of the Volkov's crew? Elsewhere on the ship, Richie and Woods stumble upon what appears to be a full-blown weapons storage area. Richie, a former military man, immediately recognizes the significance. He grabs as many weapons as he can carry. As they explore deeper, they come across a missile room, a high-security chamber that makes Woods visibly uneasy. He wants to leave, but Richie is too curious. He wants answers. Suddenly, a strange mechanical sound echoes through the corridor. A small electric-powered robot rolls past them. Startled, Richie instinctively opens fire and destroys it. They continue forward and find a bizarre chamber filled with active machines, all running without any human oversight. The machines are assembling parts, working with eerie precision. Even more disturbing, some of the robots appear to be fused with human tissue. It's clear now, this is no ordinary ship. Something dark and experimental has been happening here. Richie tries to shut down the main power to the area, and the machines go still, but only for a moment. Seconds later, everything powers back on by itself. Then, out of nowhere, a small robotic device, equipped with a nail gun, begins firing at them. Richie dives out of the way just in time, but Woods gets hit. A nail shoots straight into his shoulder. Panicked, they open fire in all directions and flee the room. Meanwhile, Steve, concerned about the masked woman, warns Julio once again to stay alert and keep the doors locked. But suddenly, Steve loses all contact with him. What he doesn't know is that down in the control room, Julio noticed a bundle of electrical wires disappearing into a dark hole in the floor. Curious, he leaned in to investigate, but something reached out from the darkness and dragged him in. Back on deck, Steve tells Richie and Woods to meet him at the control room. When they arrive, they find Woods badly injured, but that's not all. What Steve sees next leaves him stunned. The control room door has been welded shut from the outside. There's no way in. Julio is gone, and before they can even begin to process what just happened, they saw a shadowy figure in the distance, and suddenly, gunfire erupted. Steve, Richie, and Woods dove for cover, narrowly avoiding being hit. Bullets tore through the corridor as they scattered, ducking into hiding spots wherever they could. Meanwhile, the masked woman from earlier had regained full consciousness. Her name was Nasha, a scientist we briefly saw during the film's opening sequence. Still shaken and weak after surviving alone for over a week, Nasha was starving and exhausted. As she devoured whatever food was available, she urgently warned the others, shut off the ship's power or everyone's in danger. But no one understood what she meant. The captain pressed her for answers. "Where's the rest of your crew?" he demanded. Nasha looked at him and said bluntly, "They're all dead." She repeated her warning, "Cut the power. This thing needs electricity to survive." The captain, confused, asked, "What thing are you talking about?" That's when Nasha said something that sounded completely insane. It came from the Mir space station. The captain immediately dismissed her as delusional. But Nasha wasn't lying. When she got the chance, she shoved the captain and bolted. Foster ran after her and managed to catch her a short distance away. Gently, she tried to calm her down. "Tell me everything. What really happened here?" Visibly shaken, Nasha finally opened up. 8 days ago, we were in communication with the Mir space station. Then, something collided with us. Something from space. We didn't know what it was, just that it had gotten aboard. At first, we thought it was just a systems malfunction, so we shut down all transmitters. But then, the ship's computers began operating on their own. This thing, whatever it was, started absorbing our data. It was learning from us, studying us, figuring out how to kill us. Only she and her husband, Alexa, Alexei survived in the early days. Desperate, they tried to cut every connection, every cable. Still struggling to process it, Foster asked, "Who were you fighting against?" Nasha's reply was chilling. Machines. Foster didn't believe her at first, but the truth was even worse. These weren't just machines. What Nasha described wasn't mechanical in the traditional sense. It was a form of energy, something alive, a sentient force that needed one thing to survive: electricity. It moved through power lines, through computers, through machines, feeding off energy and spreading wherever it could. And as for what it truly wanted, that answer was coming soon. Even though Nasha was telling the truth, no one was ready to believe her. To prevent her from escaping or attacking again, Hiko, the captain, and Foster restrained her and tied her hands. At the same time, the captain had just learned that Julio was missing, and his patience was wearing thin. Furious, he pointed a gun at Nasha and threatened her, demanding to know where his crewman was. He accused her of spinning lies to cover something up, but Foster stepped in and stopped him. Just then, Steve, Richie, and Woods returned, bringing the body of the attacker they had encountered below deck. But it wasn't a man. The body was almost entirely mechanical, with only fragments of human flesh remaining. It was something else entirely, an advanced biomechanical hybrid. Staring at the gruesome corpse, Foster turned to Nasha and pleaded, "Tell us everything." Nasha took a deep breath. When the entity arrived, it took over the ship. It released a gas that killed most of the crew. But because it had no physical form of its own, it began building. At first, small machines, worker bots. Then it started using human bodies, fusing flesh with metal to create something far more terrifying. A synthetic army. She continued, "The technology it used, it's beyond anything we've ever seen." The few survivors were hunted down, one by these biomechanical creatures. Only Alexei and I made it for a while, but we realized the horrifying truth. If this thing, this energy-based life form, ever escapes the Volkov and reaches Earth systems, it won't stop. It will consume everything, just like it consumed us. This vessel and the body lie in front of them. That was Alexei, Nasha's husband. But the captain refused to believe any of it. He claimed that Nasha and her team had been conducting twisted experiments on humans, and now that everything had gone wrong, she was trying to cover it up. Holding back tears, Nasha simply said, "That's my husband's body. Why would I lie?" Before they could argue further, a violent storm began approaching. If they wanted to survive, they needed to get the ship moving, and fast. But the engines were still off, so they all headed below deck to restart them. Just as they reached the lower levels, a massive machine attacked. That's when they saw Julio, but he wasn't himself anymore. His body had been fused with metal and wires. He had been turned into a cyborg. In the attack, Woods was killed brutally. The rest of the crew rushed to the communications room, hoping to send a distress signal. But Nasha and Alexei had already destroyed the transmitters to stop the alien entity from spreading its signal. Richie tried to fix the equipment, but the captain suddenly smashed it, revealing his true intentions. He wanted to bring the ship in himself and claim the reward. He didn't care that everyone's life was in danger. That was the final straw. Foster punched him hard and declared, "You're not the captain anymore." Nearby, Richie noticed a working computer. He realized that if the alien was in control of the ship, maybe they could talk to it, figure out what it really wanted. He tried to establish communication. The alien responded coldly, "You are a threat to this planet. Like a virus, humanity must be eliminated." It explained that it needed parts from human bodies: brains, spines, arms, and legs. Richie's face turned pale. "We're nothing but spare parts to it," he said. That meant only one thing. If they wanted to survive, they'd have to destroy it completely. But the alien was smart. It was watching them constantly through the ship's security cameras. Steve came to a grim conclusion. "We have to sink the ship, kill the power. That's the only way to kill it." Shaken by Julio's horrifying condition, Richie panicked and decided to escape on his own. He left the group and went his separate way. The captain, still obsessed with the money, stayed behind. In a final act of desperation, he attempted to ally himself with the alien. It lured him down into the lower decks. There, he saw it working fast and efficiently, cutting up bodies and assembling more synthetic soldiers. It beckoned him forward, and what happened next, we don't see, but we know it wasn't good. Meanwhile, Steve, Nasha, Foster, and Hiko realized the doors around them were being welded shut. The machines were trying to trap them. Instead of going deeper, They rushed upward, but now the ship was stuck in the middle of the storm. Elsewhere, Richie had reached the missile room, panicked and desperate. He gathered as many explosives as he could. He wasn't ready to die here. During the chaos, Hiko was also killed, and then the captain returned, but he wasn't human anymore. He had been transformed into one of them. He attacked the remaining crew. The three of them fought back with everything they had. Finally, Nasha managed to plant a grenade inside the captain's mechanical body. Seconds later, he exploded. Mechanical body. Seconds later, he exploded. After everything they had seen, Nasha suggested a desperate solution. We have to flood the engine room with diesel. One spark, and the whole ship will explode and sink. With no better option, the remaining crew, Steve, Foster, and Nasha, headed below deck and began pumping diesel into the ship's lower compartments. But there was a problem. Earlier, when Everton gave his mind over to the machine, it had learned everything, including their plan to stop it. The alien intelligence sent a massive machine to intercept them. It captured Foster and began torturing him, even burning his face to extract information about the explosives. Just then, Richie, who had been planning to escape alone, returned armed and ready. He couldn't abandon his friends. He opened fire and helped fight off the machine, saving Foster in the process. But their victory didn't last. Before they could escape, another machine attacked, this time targeting Richie directly. He fought bravely, but didn't survive. Before dying, he whispered the final part of the escape plan to Steve. Now, only Steve, Nasha, and Foster remained. But as they ran for safety, debris blocked their path. Foster got trapped. Without hesitating, Nasha sacrificed herself, staying behind so Foster could escape. Shaken and devastated, Foster was eventually found by Steve, who carried her to the missile room. That's where Richie had set up their last hope, a makeshift escape pod, rigged with a rocket and connected to the ship's explosives. Only one person could escape in it. Steve insisted Foster take the pod. As soon as the rocket launched, a set of wires attached to it would activate the explosives on the ship. Just as Foster climbed inside, more machines arrived, trying to stop them. But Foster hit the launch button, clutching Steve as the rocket blasted off. Seconds later, the fuses were triggered, and all the explosives detonated at once. In a massive, fiery explosion, the entire ship was destroyed, completely wiped out beneath the ocean. Miraculously, a nearby vessel received their distress signal and came to rescue them. Steve and Foster had survived, but more importantly, they had saved the rest of humanity. Because if that alien energy had ever escaped into the world, it would have turned Earth into the same nightmare this ship had become. And that brings us to the end of the film. When a being from deep space sees humanity as nothing more than a virus, the only cure is total annihilation. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Virus, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Film Decoded for more thrilling movie breakdowns, and drop a comment below. Would you have survived this floating hell? And remember, stay curious, stay cinematic. We'll see you in the next video.